revealed, how I transformed pain into power after my parents prioritized trophies over my life. Jake stared at the wall of medals in the living room, each glinting piece of metal a reminder of expectations he never asked for but was always forced to carry. Every trophy gleamed with his parents' unfulfilled dreams, heavy burdens on his shoulders. The pressure closed in on him, his mind racing, emotions tangled in a web of doubt and desperation. What if I never live up to this, he thought, his hands trembling slightly as he clenched them, fighting the urge to lash out at the relentless display of success that suffocated him. Underneath the weight of this legacy, a vibrant drive to explore science throbbed beneath the surface. Unlike his father, whose success stemmed from a football field, Jake's brilliance came alive in the quiet of experimentation. The more he thought about his future, the more the internal conflict raged. He loved inventing, a passion nurtured only in the shadows, far from the spotlight that so easily consumed his parents. Is it too late to find my own path? He wondered, disbelief gnawing at the edges of his determination. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the science fair approached, every boast from his parents twisted internally like a dagger. Jake's potential is boundless, they'd tell friends, and he'd nod along, feeling the strangling tightness in his chest. Their eyes sparkled with pride over achievements that didn't belong to him. The whispers from classmates added another layer of agony. They called him freak for choosing science over sports. How could they not see what ignited his spirit? His grandfather's old workshop loomed in his mind, a secret haven filled with dusty blueprints and forgotten tools. That space had become his lifeline, the place where hopes and dreams festered amidst the shadows of obligation. Yet, now every time he thought of showing his parents something born from those quiet nights, an avalanche of dread surged through him. Would they even understand? Would they dismiss it as nonsense? Moments before his parents were scheduled to attend the fair, Jake confronted the reality of his choice. Would he risk their disappointment? The thought sent waves of panic through his core. Would choosing his own path mean severing the thin thread of hope to gain their affection? The echoes of their well-meaning voices suffocated the fragile flame of his ambition. Instead of preparing for his moment, he stood paralyzed, heart racing and breath shallow, in a whirlwind of guilt and longing. As he rehearsed his presentation, the dread of judgment coursed through his veins. In that heart-stopping moment, above thrumming anxiety, he could almost hear the clock ticking down to his destiny, a future suspended between who he was expected to be and who he truly yearned to become. Each tick became louder like a heartbeat, demanding a decision that would either bind him further to their dreams or free him to discover his own. The boundary between acceptance and rejection seemed impossibly thin, and in that suspended indecision, Jake felt the crushing weight of his family's expectations pulling him down into a darkness of uncertainty. He was at a crossroads, the choice unfolding like smoke around him, suffocating yet tantalizingly freeing. Would he embrace the invention that burgeoned within, or would he succumb, yet again, to the shadows of his parents' ambitions? Each tick of the clock felt heavier as Jake stood backstage, heart pounding against his ribcage like a prisoner protesting its confinement. This science fair was meant to be his moment, yet uncertainty laced every thought like a bitter aftertaste. The constraints lying in wait felt formidable, threatening to snuff out the flames of ambition he'd nurtured for so long. As his peers proudly presented kooky contraptions and animated projects, Jake felt like a ghost in his own body, existing in the space between dreams and obligations. Deciding to confront his fear, he stepped closer to the curtain, its fabric trembling with the chaos beyond. Each breath he took was a calculated act, forcing himself to recall every detail of the invention he'd slaved over. It was an energy generator, a small, compact piece designed to harness kinetic energy, a reflection of his persistence and creativity. The idea sparked in his mind countless evenings spent in solitude, surrounded by the remnants of his grandfather's workshop. But now, it was overshadowed by anxiety, overwhelming doubt wrapping its tendrils around his resolve. He pictured their faces, the anticipation mingling with that awful pride they wore like armor. They wouldn't he understand, would they? Would they equate his device to a mere science project or see it as a part of him, something he had bled for after years of living in their shadow? The idea of letting them down clawed at him, a weight that could very well derail his purpose. As he stepped further into the limelight, Jake envisioned the potential outcome: familial disappointment mixed with a foreign sense of freedom. They had raised him to chase trophies, but what if he could redefine success? That flicker of rebellion ignited in him. He wasn't just an extension of his parents' dreams, he was Jake, a person with his unique strengths. The realization that perhaps he did not have to choose between their love and his authentic self seized him like an electrifying current. Bolstered by this surge of clarity, he walked onto the stage. The audience's eyes fixated on him, curious, expectant. For the first time, he found a sense of power and vulnerability. Instead of hiding behind polished rehearsals, he decided to speak from the heart. "Hi everyone, today I want to share something that matters deeply to me," he began, surprised at the steadiness of his own voice. The cool air seemed to feed his courage as he shifted his energy from inward fear to outward enthusiasm. With each word, Jake let the story weave itself, a tale of growing up under a banner of trophies but finding solace in mechanical wonders. He revealed his device, showing how it could illuminate a bulb when in motion, breaking down the complexities behind his creation simply yet passionately. The energy buzzing in the room was palpable, and for the first time, instead of anticipating judgment, he found himself reveling in connection, the respects of curiosity rather than ridicule. As he concluded, a wave of adrenaline washed over him, a stark realization of his strength. He had broken the chains binding him to their narrative. He had stood tall against the storm of expectations to carve his path, his passion pulsating like a beacon. But as applause erupted around him, a familiar shadow lurked in the audience: his parents, their expressions unreadable, with a tension that quaked beneath the surface. Would they embrace this new version of him? Would they see his invention as something more than a deviation from their celebrated achievements? The air thickened with anticipation as Jake descended the stage, and in that fleeting moment, he understood that no matter the outcome, he had started to take ownership of himself, a journey that was only beginning. The moment had arrived for him to confront his parents, to articulate a truth he had suppressed for too long. Would he find support, or would he be once more trapped in their world? The overwhelming question loomed large as he approached them, each step reverberating with the weight of potential discovery. Jake's heart raced anew as he approached his parents, the relentless echo of applause still ringing in his ears. With each ambivalent expression from the crowd, his doubt crept in, teasing at the edges of his confidence. He had bared his soul to the audience, transforming his fear into a narrative. Now, facing the two figures who loomed larger than life, he felt himself revert to the boy who hid behind the trophy shelves. "Jake, that was different," his father murmured, the gravity of the words pressing down like a weight on Jake's chest. His mother's eyes glimmered with a blend of confusion and something else. Could it be disappointment? The familiar chill of their expectations felt like a shroud, threatening to engulf him once more. "I'm glad you think so," Jake replied, forcing composure into his voice. "But it's more than just different. It's who I am." The tremor that ran through him didn't escape his notice. Could he truly claim his identity, or would he be met with resistance? "Those trophies, they symbolize hard work, dedication," his mother interjected, her voice steady. "We wanted the best for you, Jake." "I know you did," he countered, stepping closer, grounding himself in the moment. "But I'm not comfortable pursuing just what looks great on paper anymore. I want to create, to innovate. I want to be me." The tension shifted as his mother studied him closely, her expression transforming from concern to a flicker of recognition. Jake felt gravity change, the weight of expectations tilting ever so slightly in his favor. "What you presented today, it was impressive," his father finally conceded, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "But you have to understand, it's not easy to let go of what we thought was right for you." "Then let me show you what's right for me," Jake replied, his voice gaining momentum. "What if we could find common ground here?" You taught me the value of hard work, and I've internalized that. But my passion lies in something else. Clenching his fists, Jake fought against the emotional tide that threatened to drown him. Those nights spent in the workshop with Grandpa taught me more than just mechanics. They taught me about joy, about making a difference. My energy generator isn't just a project, it's my way to contribute something meaningful. As he spoke, he saw a flicker of understanding dance in his parents' eyes. It was fragile, yet it represented a crack in the armor they wore. But would it be enough? Would they accept his path? The uncertainty loomed like a shadow, even as he willed himself to hold steady. I believe you can make it work, his father finally said, though the skepticism was still palpable. But what about the future? What does this energy generator mean for your career? Jake hesitated, unsure how to articulate the sinuous journey that lay ahead. It means I'll pursue my dreams through trial and error. I'll learn and grow as I go, and hopefully, I can pave new paths along the way. But I need your support to do this. The silence between them stretched immeasurably, filled with the complexities of a lifetime of hopes and disappointment. Jake's heart raced. What if they couldn't see past their own ambitions? But then again, what if he hadn't brought them this far into the conversation? Determined to seize the moment, he pressed on, I'll work hard, just like you showed me, but I'm also ready to take risks and challenge what we consider success. If you want me to find my way, you have to believe in my choices. As he finished speaking, Jake felt the weight of his words settle around them. A new responsibility hung in the air, one that could either solidify or shatter their bond. Amidst the strained silence, he recognized this conversation could be a turning point, his emergence as an individual carving his space in a world that had long felt narrowly defined for him. But would they embrace this rising version of him, or would he find himself on an uncharted path alone? The question throbbed in the air, and Jake could do nothing but await their response, the outcome hanging like a flickering light, susceptible to either flame or darkness. A stillness enveloped them, slicing through the tension like a knife. Jake's stomach twisted into knots as he watched his father's brow furrow deeper, uncertainty mingling with a flicker of something that resembled hope. His mother's gaze shifted from Jake to her husband, as if debating the next course of action, the next words that could swing this fragile moment toward either acceptance or rejection. Your passion, it's admirable, his father finally said, drawing a deep breath. But passion doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't provide stability. You have to think about where this leads in the long run, Jake. The words sunk into Jake, sharp and biting, recalling all the messages that had shaped his upbringing. I understand that being practical is important, he responded, voice steadying, but chasing someone else's version of success has left me hollow. I can't keep forcing myself into molds that don't fit. As the conversation flowed, Jake's heart began to beat in a more rhythmic, resolved manner. There was merit in what his father said, responsibility was undeniably significant. But Jake's realization was equally vital. Being practical could not come at the expense of his authenticity. I miss the boy who tinkered with machines in the garage, his father admitted, a hint of nostalgia weaving into his tone. That boy was full of creativity and dreams. Jake noticed the shift. The old shadows within his parents seemed to flicker against the light he was trying to shed. That boy still exists, he replied. He just needs space to breathe. The dialogue shifted gears, slowly uncovering a shared history of aspirations and fears. They began exploring dreams not as expectations on paper, but as personal visions. This discussion was becoming an excavation of the buried hopes that lay beneath their carefully constructed lives. What if I create a prototype? Jake suggested, excitement sparking in his voice. I could demonstrate its potential, show you that it's more than just a concept. It can contribute to renewable energy solutions. Something real, something tangible. Do you have the resources? His mother's brow arched, skepticism leading the charge as she peered at him. I'll figure it out, Jake insisted, buoyed by the heartening glint in his father's eyes. I can reach out to local makerspaces, maybe even find a mentor who's knowledgeable in sustainable technology. I'll learn everything I can. His mother's expression shifted as she observed his determination. The resolve emanating from him began to chip away at the doubts that had held her captive for so long. Jake momentarily fell into uncertain silence, waiting for her to digest his words. "What you're saying," she started, hesitation lacing her voice. "It's a risk. What if it doesn't work? What if it does?" Jake cut in, the intensity of his own conviction interweaving with an emerging thread of optimism. They stood at an intersection, either protect the dreams laid out before him and forge ahead or cling to the ideals that had once suffocated the boy's spirit. The weight between their family's history and Jake's potential future danced precariously, caught in a delicate balance. As a renewed energy surged through him, Jake felt the shift in the atmosphere like a gust of fresh air. This wasn't just about launching a project. It was about a collective evolution, a chance for his parents to reshape their own ideas of success through the lens of his aspirations. Yet even amid this burgeoning understanding, an unsettling vulnerability loomed. Would they choose to evolve with him or remain tethered to the past? Jake squared his shoulders, readying himself for the next phase of their conversation. "I'm ready to prove myself," he said, his voice a resolute whisper. "Are you ready to believe in me?" As he watched the storm of contemplation brew in their eyes, Jake knew that the moment had arrived. It was time to navigate the uncharted waters of their relationship anew, but deep inside, the anticipation clawed at him. Would they be able to meet him on this newfound ground, or would the past anchor them down? Before the silence could thicken again, Jake decided to press onward. He had to know. "Let us talk about plans to move forward," he urged, quickly grasping for any clarity before the space could close in on them once more. "What do we need to set things in motion?" But as he awaited their response, an unsettling realization slashed through him. It wasn't just his future at stake anymore. It was also theirs, and the reckoning had only just begun. The weight of his parents' silence pressed down on Jake, thickening the air around them as anticipation gnawed at his insides. He could see their conflicting emotions play out: his mother, the pragmatic anchor tethered to safety, his father, the flickering flame of forgotten dreams. It was an intricate dance that left Jake teetering on a tightrope, trying to balance the burden of expectation with his desire for authenticity. "What do you think?" he finally prodded, his voice tinged with a blend of eagerness and anxiety. The moment demanded resolution, yet their hesitance loomed large. "We'll need to structure this," his father finally spoke, albeit cautiously. "But how do you plan to finance this prototype? You might talk to makerspaces, but those resources don't always come easy." The logical inquiry sent a ripple of uncertainty through Jake. There was merit to the question, he had considered the practicalities, but sitting in the tension of that moment illuminated a deeper fear. "Maybe I can apply for grants or look into crowdfunding. It's a risk, but so is waiting for the right opportunity to appear." His mother's face softened, a constellation of thoughts flickering across her brow. "Crowdfunding could be a good avenue, but you need to have something solid to present." "Exactly," Jake replied, feeling the spark of connection. "If I build something tangible, I can provide proof of concept. The idea is to engage the community, to show them the value and utility of renewable energy technologies in a way that aligns with real-life applications." He felt invigorated, the strategy taking shape in his mind like puzzle pieces clicking together. Yet he was painfully aware that the path ahead would not be smooth. Convincing potential backers, forging connections, enduring inevitable critiques. Did he have the resilience for this? The vulnerability nagged at him, an ever-present shadow. Would he face isolation if they didn't understand? Yet buried in that fear was something else, a burgeoning resolve to face any confrontation head-on. The past might loom, but Jake felt the stirrings of growth within himself, the conviction that personal development came through challenging experiences. "Have you thought about seeking mentorship?" his father unexpectedly ventured. "You'll need guidance. Someone who can steer you through the technicalities." "Once I gather my bases, absolutely," Jake eagerly replied. The idea of bouncing ideas off of someone experienced shimmered before him, each potential connection imprinting upon his vision of success. His mother seemed to contemplate, measuring her support with pragmatic caution. We have friends who are engineers. I might be able to reach out. Gratitude washed over Jake, a beacon in the muddied waters of doubt. It felt like a pivot, a step toward legitimacy, and he realized that this was more than a chance to develop an energy solution. It felt like a niche where he could finally rebirth the boy who had felt so stifled. Suddenly, reality seemed less daunting. With each piece of the plan they unraveled together, Jake began to see the outlines of possibility emerge from the chaos. And yet, with that clarity emerged new questions. How would he defend his vision to those who might still cling to traditional metrics of success? What would he encounter once he stepped out of the protective barriers of family into a world that could be unkind? Taking a deep breath, he steeled himself for what was to come. His parents' willingness to help reinvigorated him. He saw glimmers of hope where just moments before he sensed an impending storm. "Let us meet again tomorrow to brainstorm," Jake suggested, knowing there was momentum now. "I want to make it actionable. Anything less won't do. And remember," his father added thoughtfully, "risks are part of the journey, but so is preparation." Jake absorbed the layers of meaning in his father's words. Preparation, much like his desires, would unfold one step at a time. With that thought crystallizing in his mind, he turned to leave, buoyed by their discussion. Each conversation fueled his motivation to pursue the vision within a pursuit rife with uncertainty, but undeniably his own. And as he stepped into the next day, Jake found himself on the brink of confronting another truth. He was no longer merely aiming to embrace his past passion, he was prepared to obliterate any barriers of doubt that still lingered. The steps he would take next demanded that he not only reveal his ambitions but actively prove them to those who might question their validity. The journey wasn't just about him anymore. It was about demonstrating the power of conviction to his parents and, in turn, himself. But as he faced an overwhelming surge of determination, a new voice whispered through the noise. What if, despite all he orchestrated, the true challenge would come not from market forces, but from the internal battle of self-acceptance? Would he emerge whole? He couldn't shake that question, and as urgency pulsated in his veins, he recognized he had to confront not only the world beyond his home but the shadows that lurked inside him waiting for the moment to unravel. Jake awoke to a morning bathed in sunlight, yet a dark cloud seemed to follow him as he rolled out of bed. The world felt charged, crisp with potential, but inside him, the unresolved threads of doubt wrapped tight. He stared at his reflection in the mirror, his brow furrowed. Today was the day he would reach out for mentorship, but the thought of exposing his unpolished ideas to seasoned professionals made his stomach churn. Resolute, he tapped out a few messages to his parents' engineer friends, attempting to craft a tone that blended professionalism with the vulnerability of a novice. Each notification echoed in his mind, amplifying his uncertainty. Would they respond with encouragement, or would they dismiss his dreams as naive? He spent the morning pacing, his mind racing with every possible outcome until he finally retrieved his notebook. It had become a repository for his musings, sketches, and ideas, each scratch of the pen nudging him closer to concretizing his vision. As he flipped through the pages, his thoughts crystallized into a clearer focus. He realized these notes reflected not just energy solutions, but his journey, his evolution from an anxious dreamer to someone poised to make a difference. Jake's phone buzzed, snapping him back to the present. A reply from one of his father's friends popped up. "I'm intrigued by your passion. Let us meet this week." Excitement surged, yet it was quickly tempered by trepidation. What if he couldn't justify his ideas? What if he faltered under scrutiny? Suddenly, the reality of his situation felt tangible. A pivotal moment had presented itself, and along with it, the harsh specter of self-doubt. How could he prove himself capable in a sea of seasoned experts? The inner dialogue moved like a roller coaster. He envisioned a future where he failed, images of laughter echoing over his ignorance pricking at his psyche. To counter this spiral, Jake turned to a productive method of releasing tension. He began sketching the prototype energy creation device he had envisioned. Each stroke of pencil on paper felt like grounding, a steadfast connection to his potential. He imagined how it could serve others and the satisfaction that would arise from creating something meaningful. As he fleshed out the design emphasizing practicality and community involvement, he took note of the simplicity in his approach. It wasn't just about the technology, it was about bridging the gap between innovation and real-world application. This moment of clarity lit a fire within him, an unwavering light against the shadows of doubt. Meeting with the engineer loomed ahead, but Jake adopted the mindset of a learner, realizing that open discussion could unlock new insights. The prospect of constructive dialogue turned the daunting appointment into an opportunity, flipping the narrative. Instead of viewing it as a potential judgment of his ignorance, he pushed himself to see it as a quest for knowledge. The hours slipped by as he determinedly crafted questions. He considered topics that would challenge the expert and push the boundaries of his understanding. Envisioning his brief time with the engineer, Jake felt anticipation swell. This meeting could mark the turning point in his journey, a chance to wield vulnerability and curiosity as tools for growth. Late in the evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake closed his notebook, a sense of accomplishment radiating from within. He felt a shift in his self-perception. He was transforming into a person who could confront challenges head-on, willing to accept criticism and molded by the desire to better himself. But as he draped his jacket over his shoulder, a familiar whisper wove through his resolve. What if this blossoming confidence was just a facade? Would he maintain it when the conversations turned challenging? Jake hesitated, standing alone in the fading light. The resolve he felt began to waver, now tinged with a new dread, the fear of reality stripping the veneer of progress he had carefully constructed. With the meeting imminent, he faced a choice. To step into the unknown with courage or retreat into the safety of doubt. He clenched his fists, feeling the pulse of determination course through him. It was time to confront that looming question, to brave the conversation waiting just beyond the door, and perhaps discover what lay buried, waiting to be awakened. Jake arrived early for the meeting, the sun still casting long shadows as it began its ascent. He paced outside the coffee shop, rehearsing his lines in his mind while fighting the urge to check his phone for the 1000th time. Each passerby seemed to carry their own sense of purpose, their confident strides amplifying his own insecurities. Could he really hold an intelligent conversation with someone who had years of experience? The door swung open, and a bell chimed, heralding the arrival of the engineer. Jake's heart raced. This was the moment he had contemplated his escape route from self-doubt. He drew a breath, recalling the energy device sketches tucked safely in his notebook, and pushed through the door, seeking purchase in a sea of anxiety. The engineer, Greg, greeted him with an easy smile, warmth radiating in the otherwise cool cafe. They settled into a booth, and as coffee steam curled into whimsical shapes, Jake felt himself relax just a fraction. He could compete with the swirling aroma. His ideas felt firm and ready to be unleashed. Jake, right? So, you're interested in renewable energy, I hear, Greg prodded, casually tilting his head in acknowledgement, his interest palpable. Yes, Jake began, his voice steadier than he anticipated. I had this concept for an energy creation device that I think could really benefit communities. Greg raised an eyebrow, leaning forward in curiosity, which breathed life into Jake's faltering confidence. He shared his ideas with fervor, describing the core principles behind his design. As words flowed, he noticed Greg's expressions shifting from casual interest to deep engagement. Encouraged, Jake began illustrating how the device would reduce reliance on non-renewable resources while also fostering community collaboration. Interesting, Greg said, stroking his chin. But how do you plan to overcome skepticism from both consumers and industry leaders? Sometimes innovation faces resistance not because it's bad, but because it's terrifying. Jake felt a sudden rush of self-doubt. This was the question he had dreaded most. Would he be able to convince someone with gravitas that his idea was not just another naive concept? He took a moment to gather his thoughts. I believe that education and transparent demonstrations could be key. People often fear what they don't understand, so if I can show its benefits, I think it could shift perceptions. Greg nodded, clearly impressed. That's a smart approach. You're recognizing the importance of human emotion in technology. But tell me, where does your determination come from? Why this device? The question caught Jake off guard. He hesitated, the room around him fading into a blur as emotional truths swelled within. The fragile threads of his past moments when he felt overlooked, invisible amidst a collection of accolades and trophies his parents cherished, flashed through his mind. He realized the driving force behind his passion for innovation was the desire to prove that impact outweighs recognition. "I guess," Jake started slowly, "I've always felt overshadowed by achievements that didn't feel like my own. I need to create something valuable. It's less about the awards and more about making a real difference. People deserve solutions, not empty praise." Greg studied him, a flicker of admiration dancing across his features. "That's powerful. Insight drives innovation. Remember that." As they dived deeper into the intricacies of the project, Jake felt a breakthrough. With every exchanged idea, he shed layers of insecurity, standing grounded in his autonomy. He could embrace his vision without clinging to the opinions of others. But as the meeting wound down, cracks began to surface in his newfound confidence. Greg's penetrating inquiries hinted at a complicated landscape beyond his optimistic vision. "Jake, you have a spark. But next time you dive into a project, what resources, networks, or mentors might you need to sustain your drive?" The question loomed large, sending a wave of apprehension crashing over him. He was on the cusp of self-discovery but sensed that this newfound understanding required more than just personal resolve. Jake dug deep, confronting the gnawing uncertainty that returned as a whisper. Was he truly ready to navigate complexities beyond his grasp? As he stood to leave, the tension coiled tightly within him, signifying unresolved challenges yet to come. He exited the cafe, the door closing behind him with a decisive click, leaving him suspended in a moment of decision. Could he embrace the complexities of his passion despite the shadows of his past? Somewhere in him, the yearning for clarity intensified as he endeavored to understand what lay ahead, not just for the device, but for himself in this unforgiving quest of ambition and realization. The days following his meeting with Greg were tumultuous. Bursting with a mixture of excitement and dread, Jake found himself waking each morning with the weight of purpose pressing against his chest. Yet, the lingering question of necessary resources and mentorship rattled in his mind like a caged bird, frantic for escape. He immersed himself in the design of his energy device, poring over sketches late into the night. The faint hum of his laptop served as a static backdrop while he lost himself in equations and flow diagrams, the pages multiplying like the burgeoning thoughts racing through his head. Each advancement in his design felt like a small victory, yet it was underscored by an ever-present echo of doubt. Who would take him seriously without credentials? Jake spent hours scouring local innovation networks. Each website he visited teased a world of connections just beyond his reach. He yearned to find mentors who could guide him through the intricate maze of engineering, funding, and public perception. The thought of reaching out to strangers made his stomach twist, but he forced himself to make a list of potential contacts: directors, university professors, even fellow aspiring engineers. The fear of the unknown loitered, but Jake felt a budding resolve, urging him forward. He pondered how genuine enthusiasm could be contagious, motivating not only himself but also those who might orbit his vision. Drawing up a braver self, he prepared a series of emails, aiming to speak from the heart about his project, inviting their expertise and insights. "Dear Dr. Alvarez, I admire your work in sustainable technology and would greatly benefit from your guidance." Each email sent felt like untethering a bit of his self-doubt. But as he hit send on the third message, an unforeseen wave of anxiety washed over him. Could he handle constructive criticism? What if they found his ideas lacking? Doubt, that familiar adversary, crept back into his conscience. To counter the creeping sensation, Jake reached deep within, recalling the conversation with Greg, the admiring nods and encouraging remarks that had nourished the budding flame of his inner strength. He had to foster that flame, not extinguish it. This perspective shift was profound. He needed allies, not adversaries, in this journey. After a week of anticipation, responses trickled into his inbox. A few were terse, gently declining due to their busy schedules or current projects. But one caught him off guard. A professor at the local university showed genuine interest and invited Jake to present his concept at an upcoming innovation night. Pulses of elation mixed with disbelief surged through him. This was it, perhaps the opportunity he needed to step beyond his self-imposed limitations. Jake took a step back to breathe, to imbibe the reality of the moment. However, with excitement came paralyzing pressure. Present to an audience? There was no safety net this time. The voice inside his head rapidly descended into negativity, questioning his ability to articulate his ideas clearly and compellingly. What if he stumbled, if he faltered? Framing his worry into actionable steps, he dove into preparation. Jake created a presentation that illustrated not just the mechanics of his device, but the emotion and purpose fueling it. He wove personal narratives about his background, the shadows of his past catalyzing his determination to innovate for the future. The days flew by as he worked passionately, the hours spent refining his slides transforming into a profound introspection about his own journey. Each rehearsal mirrored not just a presentation to others, but a declaration of his own worth. Yet, looming over the impending event, stood one critical question: would he be able to stand confidently before this audience and share his vision? The night approached, and as Jake stepped out of his apartment, the cool air humming with anticipation, a flicker of uncertainty mixed with excitement captivated him. What lay ahead was unknown territory, but it stirred a deep-seated desire within him to embrace every moment. He couldn't shake the realization that this was an important turning point not just for his project, but for exploring the heights of his potential as an innovator, a dreamer. Now the test awaited him: would he conquer not only the skepticism of others but also the fears that taunted him relentlessly, pushing him to the brink? The evening air thickened as he approached the venue, the glow of lights illuminating what felt like a pathway to his future. But within him remained that question: would he seize this moment of potential, or allow anxiety to undermine his hopes once again? As Jake stepped through the entrance, the buzz of the crowd hit him like a wave, mixing exhilaration and trepidation in equal measure. The venue was alive, a swirling tapestry of conversations punctuated by bursts of laughter and applause. Each sound echoed his internal turmoil, amplifying the doubt creeping into his mind. What if he failed to connect? What if his project was seen as just another fleeting idea? Scanning the room, Jake's gaze landed on a few familiar faces from his emails: the professor, a couple of young innovators, and even an older gentleman whose work he'd admired from afar. They offered a small buffer of comfort amidst the anxiety surging like an electric current through his body. Taking a deep breath, he recalled the countless hours spent meticulously crafting his presentation. This wasn't just a pitch, it was a reflection of his passion, a bridge connecting his past to the potential of the future. The weight of expectation bore down on him, but it also galvanized him to embrace his purpose. As he shifted his stance, he felt a ripple of solidarity from the fellow presenters, all waiting for their moment in the spotlight. Their shared nervousness lent him a strange sense of belonging, awakening a flicker of courage within him. It wasn't merely about him anymore, it was about sharing a vision that could inspire action. The clock ticked ominously, inching toward his allotted time on stage. Jake's mind whirred with rehearsed lines, concepts, and emotional cues. He mentally rehearsed the stories entwined within his technical explanations, determined to show not just the how but the why this energy device mattered, not only for him but for anyone who dared challenge conventional norms. When his name was finally called, Jake's heart raced. He stepped forward, bracing himself for the stage's spotlight that now felt oddly welcoming. The audience's eyes on him ignited a primal fight-or-flight response. Yet, he was determined to fight. A rush of adrenaline washed over him, fortifying his resolve. He began speaking, grounding himself in the familiar rhythm of his material. As he recounted his journey, revealing the underlying motivations fed by his past experiences, he felt walls within him shifting. With each word, he dismantled the doubting voice that had shadowed him for so long. This was his narrative, one that encapsulated both his vulnerability and his ambitions. Data flowed seamlessly into heartfelt anecdotes, and reactions danced across faces around him, from nods of understanding to expressions of curiosity. He even caught the professor's approving glance, igniting a wave of confidence. Each moment he spoke felt like stripping away layers of self-doubt, creating a clearer path toward self-acceptance. However, just as he reached the pivotal moment of his presentation, his mind blanked. A sudden wave of paranoia threatened to drown him in uncertainty. Would they see him as a fraud? Summoning every ounce of his resolve, he recalled the many emails he had sent, imagining those potential mentors cheering him on from the sidelines. He steadied himself, leaning into authenticity as he embraced the awkwardness of his experience, the floundering moments, the missteps, the palpable fear. It was all part of the innovation process, an evolution fueled by iteration and resilience. As he wrapped up, an unexpected surge of adrenaline propelled him into a robust Q&A session. Challenging questions emerged that seemed daunting at first, but they quickly turned into a dialogue and actual exchange of ideas. The initial fear that clung to his thoughts was replaced with a fervent desire to defend and refine his vision as collaborators began to emerge in those who engaged him. Yet, amid the enthusiasm of newfound connections, lingering within him was a reminder of the walls he had torn down this evening. The fear of past judgment still echoed in his mind. The applause that resounded following his presentation felt both validating and alarming, sparking a question that pressed on his chest: was this the first step toward embracing his true self, or merely a fortuitous moment that would fade into the background as life continued? As he left the stage, Jake could feel the buoyancy of victory surging. But the deeper shift was personal confrontation with his fears had transformed from mere anxiety to opportunity. Little did he know that the journey laid before him would continue to demand courage beyond the unexpected applause of a single night. The following day, an email from a stranger landed in his inbox, a venture capitalist interested in discussing potential collaboration. A new surge of uncertainty flooded through him. Would he engage with this possibility or retreat once more into the shadows of self-doubt? The stakes were rising, and so were the questions about who he truly wanted to be. Jake stood at the door of his workshop, heart racing as he took in the scene before him. The faint scent of sawdust lingered in the air, mingled with the vibrant energy of new ideas taking shape, a testament to months of growth. He had spent countless hours refining his energy device, but now he was driven by more than just ambition, he was fueled by purpose. Each decision he made resonated with the knowledge that he was not only building a prototype, he was shaping his identity. After that pivotal presentation night, things had started to shift. Responses to his outreach were encouraging, leading to robust conversations that expanded his horizons. Collaborations sprouted like wildflowers, mirroring the newfound confidence blossoming within him. Several mentors had agreed to guide him, lending their expertise and helping him navigate the labyrinth of sustainable innovation. The doubts that had once clung to Jake as stubborn shadows began to dissipate, replaced with reinforced pillars of belief. However, the true test of his character came when an investment opportunity arose, a momentous chance to seek funding through a pitch competition positioned at the solid intersection of excitement and trepidation. This was not about making a mere presentation anymore, it was about stepping fully into his role as an innovator. As he prepared his pitch, Jake felt a shift in his self-perception. No longer was he the nervous boy battling anxiety against a wall of trophies. He had evolved into a confident man ready to share his vision. He remembered that night of uncertainty when he first stood on stage, how he embraced his vulnerability. Now, he wove that authenticity into every slide he prepared, transforming nervousness into a rallying cry for change. On competition day, the venue pulsed with energy and vibrant ideas. When the MC called his name, Jake stepped into the spotlight with a steady resolve. He projected his journey, articulating not just the technical innovations behind his device but also the emotional undercurrents that made it personal. As he recounted his evolution, the audience's faces reflected unwavering gravitas, captivated by the authenticity he presented. But the true triumph materialized during the Q&A session that followed. Questions that would have previously sent him spiraling into doubt only added more fuel to his fire. He engaged in thoughtful discussions, rebutting skeptics with insights born from meticulous research and hard-won experience. In every answer, he saw not just the professional recognition he sought, but also the validation of his transformation. As applause erupted at the end of his presentation, Jake stood tall, sensing that acceptance radiating through the room. He took a moment to breathe deeply, feeling the satisfaction of having conquered not only the expectations of others but his self-imposed limitations. The judges deliberated, and the eventual announcement of a grant awarded to him felt surreal. It was tangible evidence of his growth, a concrete achievement marking the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Beyond the financial support, the recognition spurred an exhilarating wave of motivation within him. He understood that acceptance was not merely about accolades, it was tied to self-acknowledgement and the realization of his worthiness in pursuing his passion. In the subsequent weeks, with the grant in hand, Jake planned, collaborated, and executed with renewed vigor. He transformed his workshop into a hub where innovation thrived, not just for personal ambition but to serve a greater purpose. Jake learned to embrace feedback as a vehicle for improvement rather than a callback to his insecurities. Each prototype he developed echoed his growth, aiming to impact lives and inspire positivity. His parents, witnessing the undeniable success of his endeavors, began to shift their perspective as well. They actively participated in discussions and offered their support, connecting Jake's work to their own mission of outreach and sustainability. The gap that had long echoed between their ambitions and his open space filled with collaboration, understanding, and mutual respect. As he looked back at the wall of trophies that once felt suffocating, now he saw them as reminders of a past Jake had evolved from, a symbol of motivation fueling his ongoing journey. They no longer defined him, rather, they served to highlight every challenge he had transformed into a catalyst for growth. Jake had faced his demons and emerged victorious, proud, and resolute. He was no longer an extension of his parents' dreams but a creator, a builder, an innovator on a mission to create meaningful change. This reaffirmation marked his concrete achievement as he had conquered the fear that once paralyzed him, now standing firmly in his identity and purpose. And in that moment, with joy radiating within him, Jake realized he wasn't just reinventing technology, he was rebuilding himself, an unyielding testament to resilience and undeniable potential. You need to subscribe now to witness more transformative journeys like Jake's. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and enable more stories of personal triumph to reach those who need it. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, we want to hear your thoughts. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is pivotal to our community.